Hello, good morning, and welcome to another exciting moment where we talk about business. It is Business 360, and my name is Blyden Okem. In Business 360 today, we'll look at some of the biggest stories in the world of business. And one of it would be the suspension of IBM advertising on X. We'll also talk about the markets, the stock market, the commodity market. We'll look at global economic outlook and different outings in the world of business. And we begin with IBM story. The IBM has suspended advertising on X, formerly known as Twitter, after a report said its ads were placed next to posts praising Adolf Hitler and Nazism. The company said it was completely unacceptable that its contents appeared in such threads on the platform. X said it does not intentionally place brands next to this kind of content. It comes as X owner Elon Musk was critical after calling an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory actual truth when replying to a post on the platform. Still on the foreign scene, Donald Trump has assailed a judge and clerk handling its New York fraud trials and case as a gag order banning him from criticizing court personnel was paused. The ex-president sued the judge in the civil case, Arthur Egoran, after he barred him and his attorneys from speaking about judicial and judicial staff. Mr. Trump's lawyers had argued the gag order was unconstitutional. A state intermediate appeal court has granted what is known as an interim stay. Judge David Friedman cited the constitutional and statutory rights at issue in Thursday's ruling. Meanwhile, Alphabet Incorporated Chief Executive Officer Sundar Pichai says all countries have an incentive to make sure artificial intelligence is safe. He spoke at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Leaders Conference, the CEO Summit. Let's find out more.
Unilateral safety to be had. We all have a shared premise that AI will proliferate. So this is not the inherent nature of software. AI advances will get out to all countries. And so it is naturally the kind of technology, I don't think there's any unilateral safety to be had. We all have a shared incentive to solve for safety. You could have AI go wrong in one country that will impact every other country. So in some ways, it's like climate change in the planet. We all share a planet. I think that's true for AI. So now that you know that will be true, I think you have to start building the frameworks globally to make progress. I've seen encouraging progress when the G7 happened in Hiroshima. I think it was a good start. You've seen more progress. The UK AI Summit last week, the administration here, the White House has been leading the way as well. And I saw good, encouraging announcements even yesterday.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden said on Thursday at the CEO session at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Leaders Conference that the U.S. has helped bring peace and security to the region. He said he had a good and straightforward meeting with
transformative growth, ensured the open flow of commerce, lifted millions of people out of poverty. Today, that relationship goes both ways. The United States remains vital to the future of the region.
Meanwhile, at the APEC summit, protesters demanded a ceasefire in Gaza. They shut down traffic on San Francisco Bay Bridge as U.S. President Joe Biden and world leaders gathered in the city for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Leaders Conference. Let's look at details of this and what the shutdown was all about.
Genocide is predicated on 75.
The concerns regarding the war, the battle between Israel and Hamas. In Africa, Ukraine has sharply decreased its exports of agricultural products to Asian and African countries in 2023 due to blocked seaports in the Black Sea. The substantial portion of Ukraine's agrarian metallurgical and chemical exports historically departed from Black Sea ports. The proportion of the agricultural exports to Africa dropped from 14% to 7% between January and October 2023. Still on the African scene, the International Monetary Fund (IMF) announced on Thursday that it had reached an agreement on a $938 million loan for Kenya, an East African country facing liquidity problems and economic difficulties. Kenya's economy, the locomotive of East Africa, has been severely shaken by COVID-19, followed by a shockwaves of war in Ukraine and a historic drought in the Horn of Africa. Public debt in a country of some 53 million inhabitants stood at over 10,100 billion shilling, an equivalent of 64.4 billion euros at the end of June, according to Treasury figures, representing around 2/3 of gross domestic products in the country. Kenya is under pressure on its liquid assets, mainly due to large Eurobond maturing in June 2024 in the amount of $2 billion, according to the IMF, which notes, however, a recovery in the agriculture and tourism sectors. William Ruto announced, the president of the country announced, that a country would repay a first tranche of $300 million in December. In Malawi, to cut costs, Malawi's president, Lazarus Chakwara, has implemented an immediate suspension of all international travel for himself and public officials in the country. This decision comes in the wake of a devaluation of the country's currency as Malawi secures a loan from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) to address economic challenges. Malawi's president, Lazarus Chakwara, has instructed all ministers currently abroad to return home. He also ordered a 50% reduction in fuel allowances for ministers, principal secretaries, directors, and senior officers, adding that the practice of spending taxpayers' money on useless activities in the form of allowances should be put to an end. Malawi's economy is grappling with challenges such as a shortage of petrol and diesel, coupled with high inflation. Meanwhile, MultiChoice Group Limited has disclosed its third consecutive semi-annual loss, attributing the challenges to foreign exchange difficulties in Nigeria and persistent power outages in South Africa. Africa's biggest pay TV company posted a net loss of 1.32 billion rand, an equivalent of $72.4 million for 6 months to September 30th, MultiChoice said in a filing. The difficulties in Nigeria arose from the mid-June decision to allow the naira to trade more freely against the dollar, resulting in a 40% devaluation. This compelled MultiChoice to revalue its intergroup loans, resulting in foreign exchange losses. The company noted that after experiencing robust growth with the addition of 1.4 million new subscribers in the fiscal year 2023, subscribers expansion in the rest of Africa was more moderate in the first half of fiscal year 2024. Still in Nigeria, the federal government has conducted plans to withdraw civil claims totaling $1.1 billion against any SPA, ending a long battle in Italian courts over allegation of corruption in an oil field deal. The Ministry of Justice will waive the claims before Italy's highest court unconditionally and with immediate effect no later than today, November 17th, according to reports. The country will also irrevocably waive the rights to any further legal action in Italy against any its affiliates and current and past officers regarding rights for the field known as Oil Prospecting License 245 or OPL 245. And he confirmed receipts of the letter and said in a statement that it was ready to consider, together with the government of Nigeria, the necessary steps for conversion of the prospective license to one that will allow the development of oil blocks in the country. Meanwhile, global investment bank Morgan Stanley has disclosed that the interventionist policies of former President Muhammadu Buhari triggered economic bottlenecks and hindered private sector's ability to grow in the country. As some of the interventionist policies, according to Stephen Quatry, an analyst at Morgan Stanley, included multiple foreign exchange windows and fuel subsidies regime. Quadri, in the report titled Market Outlook, Nigeria's New Dawn, which was published on the bank's website, disclosed that the last 8 years have been difficult for Nigerians. Now regarding the oil sector and oil marketers. Oil marketers stated on Thursday that the reason behind the long queues at petrol filling stations in Abuja and neighboring Nasarawa State and Niger States is the insufficient supply of premium motor spirit by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited (NNPC). The NNPCL, which is the sole importer of the product, refuted the oil marketers' claim, attributing the queues in the affected areas, particularly Abuja, to price war. The queues for petrol at filling stations in Abuja and its neighboring states in particular, as well as some southeast and south-south states, have persisted in the past few weeks. Let's talk about the oil market when we return from this break. We'll go on a quick break, and afterwards will be the markets, the commodities, the foreign exchange market, and others. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It is Business 360, and my name is Blyden Ukem. And now looking at the markets. Oil heads for fourth straight weekly fall. WTI crude futures steadied around $73 per barrel today, but we're still headed for a fourth straight weekly decline as signs of robust supplies and uncertain demand outlook weighed heavily on the market. Oil prices dropped nearly 5% on Thursday and sank to over 4 months' lows as latest data pointed to large builds in U.S. crude inventories, while analysts suggested the sharp decline was likely amplified by automated selling programs. The IEA also said this week that the market wouldn't be tight as previously expected this quarter amid robust production. Elsewhere, reduced fears that the Israel-Hamas conflict would disrupt oil supplies from the Middle East weighed on prices as well. These moves came even as OPEC Plus member countries extended voluntary supply and their cuts through the end of the year. And now we move to the market and see what the prices are this morning, beginning with the energy market and afterwards the metals and agricultural commodities. The energy market. The energy market this morning has indicated price decline for most of the commodities. Beginning with U.S. crude, the West Texas Intermediate Crude, WTI. The current price is $72 per barrel, dropping 0.109 points, a negative 0.15% decline. Brent crude, which is Nigeria's price benchmark, our current price level is $77 per barrel, downward by 0.15 points, a negative 0.2% decline. Natural gas also downward, gasoline downward, derivative of crude, heating oil also downward this morning, coal price slightly downward. Let's look at the metals. The price of the metals indicates positivity for gold. Gold moving higher by 7.64 points, a 0.38% appreciation. $1,988 per ounce is the price of gold. Silver price at $23 per ounce, upward by 0.2 points, a 0.84% appreciation. Copper slightly downward this morning, a negative 0.51%. The price of copper in the market is $3.68 per pound. Steel price is upward by 3,957 Chinese yuan per ton is the price of steel. Agricultural market next. Agricultural commodities begins with soybeans. Soybeans downward by 4.25 points, a negative 0.31% decline. $1,355 per bushel is the price for soybeans. Wheat price also upward this morning. On the other hand, 2.46 points increase, a 0.44% appreciation. $555 per bushel is the price of wheat. But palm oil is downward this morning by 59 points, a negative 1.48% decline. 3,939 Malaysian ringgit per ton is the price of palm oil. And now to the foreign exchange market, but we begin with crypto insights as Bitcoin corrects. Why did a slower inflation reading move currencies and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin the way it did regarding the U.S. inflation reading? Well, let's have insights by Jim Lauriel and get insights on this.
On November 14th, we saw the latest read of the much-anticipated U.S. CPI report. Now, it came in lower than expected on both the headline and, more importantly, excluding food and energy. Now, the broad market reaction was fierce as risk assets like stocks screamed higher and yields fell. Now, one move that most did not expect was a swift 4.5%